Now we're going to talk about the Individual Artist Commission in depth. So the Individual Artist Commission supports the creation of new work by an individual artist. The project must engage a segment of the community through a small-scale public presentation of the work, in person or virtual, or community involvement during the creative process. Grant awards are determined by a peer review panel made up of artists. That's a little bit different for this category. Everybody on the panel is an artist. And up to 7 individual artist commissions are available for each county. Just point out here that we funded Brad Scher a few years ago for Dragon Circus, which was a puppet project that took place out on the streets of Poughkeepsie. We funded Crystal Yang a few years ago for her painting series, Mid-Hudson River Painting. We funded Julia Whitney Barnes for a project called Hudson River of Bricks, which was a really interesting project where she sought out historic bricks from the region and from all the different brick factories that existed along the Hudson River, and glazed some of them and then create an installation in the shape of the Hudson River. We funded Jovan O'Neill for From Brick Street to the Grave, which is it was a poetry project where he wrote poetry, and then for his community presentation, he did a poetry workshop at the Newark Free Library, which, as you can see, this was pre-pandemic, like really, really well attended, and we were just thrilled by this program. Fanning Your Talents, Jing Shui. So this was a really great program that Jing did where she engaged members of the New Paltz community in painting their own fans and learning about traditional Chinese fan dancing. So it was a great exchange where Jing was really interested in sharing bits of her culture and artistic practice, and asking the participants to think about how they could translate what is valuable or important to them to this same art form. And they did she made fans and choreographed her own individual dance, and that was presented alongside the participants' creations at the LT Memorial Library. We funded Roberto Juan Rodriguez for Afro-Cuban percussion. He did composed several pieces, and he did a lot of these in partnership with high school students in Kingston. So the overall goals of this program are to support artists in Dutchess, Orange, and Ulster counties in the creation of new work, support underrepresented artists that in our region, which may include Black, Latina, Indigenous, Asian, people of color, LGBTQIA, and or disabled artists, and all artists are encouraged to apply. And really, this program is interested in highlighting the vital role that an artist plays within a community, and that's really where this public component comes from. We really want the public to see the work that you were able to create and engage with you in some way. Who is eligible? So applicants may, again, submit one grant proposal to this funding opportunity, as is the same for any of the categories, one proposal per category. Must be at least 18 years of age, resident of Dutchess, Orange, or Ulster County, New York State, may not be enrolled in a full-time degree program, but part-time degree programs are okay. Artist collectives, groups, and artist collaborations are not eligible. It has to be one individual artist. And really this has to do with how low the funding amount is and keeping it, the scope of what's able to achieve kind of fair across the board for all applicants. And artists who received this commission previously may apply again if their commission took place in 2018 or earlier. Recipients of 2019, 2020, and 2021 are not eligible until their 3 years passes. Just a general note here, and we get this question a lot, organizations cannot apply for an individual artist commission to cover the artist fees of their project. Really, no projects should be split across multiple categories. So for example, for individual artists, I would not at all recommend that you apply to individual artist commission to create work and then a community arts grant to present the work within the same year. We've had a lot of successful applicants apply for maybe, they're going to apply for an individual artist commission this year, and then the next year they're going to apply for a community arts grant to present it in a larger scale way. The reason we don't recommend this is because it really just harms your application, because they are separate panels. So you don't, whichever panel happens to meet first, they're going to be saying, well, we don't know what's going to happen with the next panel, so we can't award funding to this project. And it's happened a few times when these kinds of situations have come across. And again, please see the guidelines for the complete list of ineligible projects. So what can we pay for? First of all, we strongly encourage the artist who is applying to seek a fee for their time to create the work. This is, we get questions every year about, can I ask for money to pay myself? Yes, of course you can. And it really helps the feasibility of the project, because it shows the panel that you are being paid at least somewhat for your time to do the project. You can also request funding for community outreach, advertising, or marketing efforts. I would recommend this being a very small percentage of your grant, because it is so focused on creation of new work. Efforts to increase accessibility to arts programming. So if there's some, again, I would recommend that being a smaller portion of your grant, because it is already quite a small grant amount. We can fund supplies and materials needed to execute the proposed project. This might be art supplies, hardware, memory cards, anything that's consumable. And we can also fund, only in the individual artist commission category, equipment purchase. So equipment, software, subscriptions, or training needed to execute the project. So this could be things like, I need to get a camera, or I need to get some lighting equipment, or I need to get this specific piece of equipment I need for my ceramics practice, or something along those lines, or I need to get Photoshop for the year, or something like that. Individual items, though, however, may not exceed $1,000. So now I'm going to talk about the public component. So first of all, again, there are two options to the public component. You can either have a public presentation of the work at the conclusion of you completing the work, or involve a specific community during the creative process. So first, public presentation. This presentation must be open to the general public and can be in person or virtual. The presentation must take place in the artist's county of residence, and artists may charge an admission fee for the public presentation. There's no problem with them charging a fee. I would recommend, though, if it's a very, very high fee, that might present a barrier for entry for most people in our region and could kind of harm the application. So if it's something that you think really requires a higher admission fee, I would recommend some sliding scale, or pay what you can, or no one turned away options. And really, again, this is a very small scale performance. It could be something like, I'm going to do a virtual gallery of my work that I created, or I'm going to do a pop-up showing of this work at this coffee shop, or I am working with a gallery. I'm going to have a presentation at that gallery. The focus is on the creation. This can really be a small scale way to share what you did with the public. And just a note on inclusion here too, when you're doing that public program, we really recommend that you try to reach as broad an audience as possible, and think about maybe trying to engage with some audiences that don't typically engage with your work, because this is a great opportunity for you to, get some more people interested in you, following you and your practice. Okay, and the second option is involvement during the creative process. And again, they are two separate options, and I do not recommend proposing that you're going to do both, because the funding amount is $1,500, just isn't feasible within the scope of what's being offered for you to really achieve both of these. So we strongly recommend picking a presentation or involvement during the creative process. So we recommend that the artists work with a specific community during this process. So that means that you're not just saying the community I'm working with is everyone in Dutchess County or residents of the Hudson Valley. Instead, be more focused and say something like, I'm working with elders at this senior living facility in New Paltz. That would be a very specific community that you're working with, or that you're going to work with students in Newburgh. That attend that are at the library. You're going to set up at the library and do some kind of program with kids. It should be something that is really focused on bringing that community into the creative process. And that can look like a lot of different things. It could be that you're going to offer a workshop, or that the community members are going to serve as performers in the artist's creative work, or they're going to create work that's parallel to the work that the artist is making, and maybe it's all going to be shown together. Or, for example, you're a painter or a photographer, and you're going to do a portrait series of specific members of a community. That would be like a really straightforward community engagement process. It could also look like inclusion of interviews with a segment of the community, or inclusion of their stories or anecdotes that's going to somehow inform the work that you're creating and also highlight them. And community involvement may be done virtually. Okay, so submitting to the Individual Artist Commission. Again, all grant proposals are due March 14th of this year, 2022, by midnight. I am going to create a separate video where I'm going to go in depth on the Individual Artist Commission application, and we can take a look at that together and see what are the questions that you're going to be asked. You'll see that this is the most straightforward application that we have, because pretty much everybody is applying the same way, and we're really just focused on hearing about what you are planning to do to create the work and how it will be shared with the public. When you apply, you'll have to include proof of residence, must be dated 2021 or earlier, and please again see the guidelines for acceptable documents. This is actually, excuse me, this is a typo from last year, and this is a good opportunity for me to note. In previous years, we had the budget form as an Excel document that you would download from our website and upload to your application. That is no longer the case. The budget is embedded in the application form itself. So you will see it there. It is a table, and you'll fill it in on the form. Please include your artist resume or bio. Work samples are required for the Individual Artist Commission, and you can see the guidelines for details. We'll accept up to 10 files. And any other additional documents, which could be like letter of support, press articles, marketing samples, or anything like that, and we'll accept up to 3 of those. When you're working on the budget, please make sure that you're checking for consistency. We recommend working on the narrative and the budget together, or even working on the budget first, because I think sometimes it can provide a map to what you're asking us to pay for, which is really the core of what the application should be focused on, showing us how you're going to expend the funds and how that's going to have a strong impact. There is an explanation column on the budget table that's embedded in the submittable form. Please be sure to use it to expand on what you mean by expenses. So say you have $1,000 for supplies. That would be a good place in the explanation column to explain what those supplies are and how you're getting to that number. Make sure the grant request is equal to $1,500. It is not a range for this category, it's a set funding amount. And please ask us to review a draft of your budget. We're happy to do it, and we can very quickly check to make sure that it looks good and we can understand it, and that it's a competitive budget, that you're asking for things that are the type of things that we're likely to fund. For Individual Artist Commission, the review criteria is the same as the other categories, but kind of means something a little bit different. So for artistic merit, that's really based on the work samples that you're providing and the quality of the artistic experience that's going to be shared with the public. Project feasibility, this means, does the timeline make sense? Does the budget make sense? Is it clear what will happen and when? Impact of the project is really twofold for Individual Artist Commission. It's first of all, what is the impact on the artist? Does it represent some kind of career growth for the artist? And also, what is the impact on the general public? And really, depending on how you're crafting your application and what your priorities are, I would say overall, the benefit to the applicant artist is of utmost importance to the panel, and then how much it's engaging the public may vary depending on what the overall scope of the project is. And then, of course, if it addresses one or more of the goals for 2022 funding. Okay, so closing out on the Individual Artist Commission, the first steps I would recommend: review the online application form and the guidelines, complete the project eligibility form, which I referenced early in this info session or in the last video. so that we can check for eligibility, and start organizing any digital copies of required attachments like your work samples or your proof of residency. And please feel free to make an appointment with us if you have questions or want to get any feedback on what you're working on.